All right, welcome. Today we're diving deep inside the brain to decode something called mental workload. We're going to explore how scientists are figuring out how to measure cognitive overload, that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, directly from the brain itself. The goal? To create a kind of early warning system for a mind that's under way too much pressure.
So let's start somewhere where focus is literally the difference between life and death, the cockpit of an airplane. This quote really nails it. Pilots are just getting slammed with information, a constant fire hose of data. And when that flow turns into a flood, well, the risk of a catastrophic mistake goes way, way up.
And that leads us to the billion-dollar question, right? The one that's driving this entire field of research. What if we could build some kind of tripwire for the brain? Something that sends up a flare when a person is hitting their cognitive red line before it's too late.
To even begin to answer that, we've got to get a really solid handle on what exactly it is that scientists are trying to measure, this thing called mental workload.
Now, on the surface, this definition seems pretty straightforward. But here's the thing you have to get. Mental workload isn't just about how hard a task is. It's really a constant dance between three things: the demands of the task itself, the mental effort you decide to put in, and your own, very limited pool of brain power. So think of it less like a fixed number and more like a constantly shifting balance.
So how in the world do you measure such a complex internal feeling? Well, researchers basically have a three-pronged attack. First, they can just ask people. They use surveys like the famous NASA TLX. Second, they measure performance. How many mistakes are you making? How fast are you reacting? And third, and this is the cool part, they can tap directly into physiological signals from your body and, of course, your brain. And it's that third approach, the physiological one, that's leading to some of the most mind-blowing breakthroughs. To get the most direct reading possible, scientists are using technology that can essentially eavesdrop on the brain's private conversation with itself.
That technology is called electroencephalography, or EEG for short. You've probably seen it. It's that cap with all the sensors on it. By placing it on someone's head, we can listen in, completely non-invasively, to the faint electrical rhythms that billions of neurons create when they fire. We can literally watch the brain hum along as it works on a task.
But here's the challenge. The raw signal you get from an EEG looks like a chaotic scribble. It's incredibly complex. So how do you translate that electrical chatter into a clear, reliable number that says, hey, mental workload is high, or nope, we're all good here?
Well, the answer lies in a really, really clever method. Instead of just trying to analyze that squiggly line directly, researchers are now transforming it into a complex network. This process suddenly reveals a hidden structure in the data that was there all along. We just couldn't see it before.
It's called a visibility graph, and the concept is actually pretty cool. Imagine the brainwave is a mountain range. You're standing on one of the peaks. Now you look out at all the other peaks. If there's another peak you can see, with nothing blocking your view, you draw a line connecting your peak to that one. You do this for every single peak, and all of a sudden, that flat, one-dimensional signal has morphed into this rich, two-dimensional network of connections.
And that's the whole point. The structure of that network, like how many connections there are or how they're clustered together, it directly reflects the properties of the original brainwave. So a really rhythmic, periodic brain signal is going to create a very different looking network than a chaotic, irregular one. It's brilliant.
You see, this network approach is fundamentally different from the way we've traditionally done things. Classical methods, they focus on the power of certain brain rhythms, like theta waves. But this visibility graph method, it's looking at the actual geometric shape of the signal and the relationships between individual moments in time. It's a completely new lens for looking at the same data.
And the big question is, does it work? Oh yeah, it works. Recent studies using this exact method found it could reliably tell the difference between easy and hard tasks. And here's the crucial part. It worked even when the EEG signal was super noisy, which is a huge problem in any real-world recording. That makes this method incredibly robust.
But, and there's always a but in science, isn't there? Even with these fantastic new tools for analysis, the entire field is running up against a major scientific hurdle that we really have to talk about.
It's known as the reproducibility crisis, and what it means is that way too often, a lab will publish a really exciting result, but then when other scientists try to do the exact same experiment, they can't get the same outcome. This is a massive problem for building on past work and moving science forward.
And this slide right here really just quantifies the problem. A review of 59 different studies found that basic, crucial details were often just missing from the papers. For instance, only a third of them even reported their electrode impedance. That's a basic quality check. And get this, an astonishingly low 2% gave any scientific reason for why they chose the number of participants they did. How is anyone supposed to reproduce your study if you don't even give them the full recipe?
Now, the good news is the scientific community knows this is a problem and they are actively working to fix it. The path forward is all about more transparency and more standardization. That means things like agreeing on standard ways to collect and store data, using detailed checklists so you don't forget to report things, and maybe most importantly, sharing your data and your analysis code so anyone can check your work.
So, with all that in mind, let's circle all the way back to where we started. Back to our pilot in the cockpit, trying to safely land that plane. What this timeline shows us is a really clear roadmap to the future. Right now, we're in the phase of developing these incredibly powerful new tools, like that visibility graph method. The very next, and absolutely critical step, is to build those tools on a solid foundation of rigorous, reproducible science. Once we have that, we can start testing them in realistic simulators and eventually integrate them into real-world tools that give live feedback.
And this leaves us with this absolutely fascinating vision for the future. A world where a pilot's helmet or an air traffic controller's console is actively monitoring their cognitive state in real time. A world where these systems can act as a sort of guardian angel, a cognitive co-pilot that detects mental overload and steps in to prevent disaster before it ever happens, making these high-stakes jobs safer for everyone. Well, that's the ultimate prize. Thanks for joining me.